Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Morning Magazine for this August 21st, 2019. Have your guest host, James J. Maloff, in with you today. And I am joined by Mayor Zach Vruwink, along with Kevin Bargender. Bargender? I knew I was going to get it wrong. Bargender. Thank you very much, Kevin, for joining us from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. Appreciate you coming in. Mayor, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. It's a beautiful morning in the city.
Good to hear. Good to hear. So you're doing well today.
Yes.
Good. Good. I know that we have a whole hour together, but we also have a lot to cover today. So first up, I want to let people know that we will be taking phone calls at 424-2600 if anybody has any questions for the mayor. Otherwise, if we can get kind of going on the storm aftermath, and I understand with FEMA and that, I know you have some notes on that one.
Sure. Yeah, we actually had a visit with FEMA, so it's hard to believe we're already a month after the storm event, and we've done a tremendous amount of cleanup thus far. But so since that time, we were given some guidance from Wood County Emergency Management, as well as the Wisconsin Emergency Management Group, to the effect of what information do we need to start capturing, and what information for costs and documentation and photos in many cases do we need to be capturing as we go through the cleanup process. And because of the widespread damage and the volume of it at the county level, basically on a per capita basis, FEMA, it qualified for a FEMA review. And so we hosted them 2 weeks ago, actually last week, sorry, in the city, and basically went through all of our costs with them and all the information we were able to identify. And so at the city level, both the utility and the city itself presented information to them. In short, our costs at the city level, which is public works and protective services, etc., those costs are just under $800,000, and that includes straight time and overtime and equipment costs, as well as any overtime from the protective services folks that were attributed to the storm event in July. And so we presented that, went page by page with them, which goes park by park or property by property to review everything from traffic signals to park damage to property damage within the parks. And there's some people saw the noise walls, the sound barriers along the expressway, all of those types of things that would require the city to go back and recover or to repair following the storm event. And they basically checked off eligible, non-eligible, eligible, non-eligible. It's just like I likened it to my experience with my my insurance adjuster, personally. So that process was concluded last week, and the utility went through the same process. We were asked to provide additional information, and basically the county will then at that point package the information, send it to the state folks, and the state folks advance it to FEMA. So it was a concurrent visit with state and federal emergency management folks. And we've now submitted that to the president's desk, and effectively at this point, I just saw late last week or early this week, Governor Evers had requested the presidential declaration of disaster, which is necessary for FEMA to be able to issue any financial support back to the municipalities which experienced damage.
Thankfully, we don't deal with these kind of things very often. So when we hear about FEMA, normally it's on the news, it's on the Weather Channel, that sort of thing. So I appreciate you kind of breaking it down for us, that what happens in these scenarios. So when you say that you had to take pictures, had to document the city, you mean literally the whole city, not just the damaged areas, but other areas as well.
Anywhere that would require a city crew to intervene, because the city doesn't have an insurance policy, can't be insured against tree removal in its parks. We can have a certain limit where we were recovering, I don't know, I think it was $5,000 in some areas. But we had to take as much drone footage. Fortunately, with drones in existence today, we were able to do very efficiently drone footage along a lot of the corridors where a lot of trees were down. But there's also, it's interesting, at the federal level, there's a book, literally a Bible as it relates to emergency management, how you deal with certain restorations. So how you treat stumps, for example, how you must treat the property and restore the property around there. Of course, if there's floodplains involved, it's just incredibly complex. Very, very much a baptism by fire as it relates to not just going in and cleaning up after the storm, because FEMA could say, well, all of those costs are ineligible for reimbursement.
Well, that's my next question. So hopefully they will help, or hopefully it will be we'll able to get assistance from them if we can. Right. Is there what is the plan then? To take care of it ourselves, to ask for state help? Or?
So the process may take as little as a month, or as long as 6 months for FEMA for the president, literally for the president to declare a disaster relief situation to FEMA. And from there, FEMA then will go through and we'll have to provide additional documentation and information about the efforts that we actually undertook or will plan to take yet, because there's still a lot of cleanup and recovery in our city property. And from there, FEMA will, as far as we understand, all of the costs that we've incurred will be eligible for a 75% reimbursement. So it's on a reimbursement basis. We have to perform the work in order for us to get reimbursed for it. And as far as we know, there aren't any additional hoops to jump through from a cost standpoint with FEMA. Now, the last 25% is either on a local or on a state basis. And we understand on a state basis, there aren't any resources remaining. There were other storm events throughout the course of this calendar year. We had obviously major ice and winter storms earlier this year. So the state had about $2 million left in its pot, which doesn't even cover the 25% that'll have been accrued at the county level. At Wood County's level is just under $4 million. And I was reading through the other counties. It ranges high and low. We're right in the middle of the pack.
Saw some of that too.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to kind of talk about that for a second there too, because it gives us a little perspective that our area was certainly hit hard, and we feel for everybody in the area, but there are some spots that were hit much worse than us, and understandable why the state had to put the money where it did. And it's good that we have the ball rolling, we have things going here, and we're all kind of working around things, and it is not the same thing by any means, but it is a little similar to the construction. We've had to adapt to that, and especially being Midwesterners, we adapt. That's what we do. We do it with the weather every season, and we do it with this kind of thing too. But it is, I think, for a lot of us, helpful to know that there is a plan in place, that we're doing something, that our officials are active in trying to get this addressed. I think also it is important to keep in mind that the term baptism by fire used. Boy, that really is in this scenario. This is not something that any of us, and you yourself, have dealt with before. Right. So we all got to understand that this is one of those things that's not going to happen overnight. Sure. It's going to take time, especially with this government, not this one in the state or in this city, but I mean overall. Things are slow to happen. So hopefully we'll find something out soon. But that's good to get an update on that. Appreciate it. Yeah.
It does also remind us, I think, the need for training. And the FEMA offers a tremendous amount of training resources, some that flow through the state into the county level, not just financial, but staffing, that there are a lot of online training courses as well. And that's given us an opportunity to reflect on our response, right? We talked a little bit about that previously on a show or on an episode, but we're continuing to review that whether or not all of our city staff at a management level have reached a certain, it's just like any other course, college course or other, there's 100, 200, 300 level courses on up to 900, and it reminds us that these are the types of things we train for, and so we're going to continue to revisit our training needs, and most certainly there's going to be, including myself, going through refresher courses so we can make sure we're prepared for the next event.
And I really appreciate that you're always willing to learn, that you're willing to constantly kind of be adapting to these situations.
Definitely.
We have a call coming in. Let's go ahead and take it. Good morning. You're on with Mayor Zach Vruwink.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. Mayor, we will continue to clean up, and we'll just put it on a ongoing dollar value, and then perhaps in 4 to 6 months, hopefully sooner, we might get approval or may not get approval from FEMA. And and I'll listen up there. And the second thing is my addressing individual homeowners or other landlords, perhaps, that maybe could tap this or are into it, or you're only right now addressing city cleanup and city needs. And I thank you for your time.
Great questions.
Yeah, thanks for the call.
The first question about sort of the tallying of costs and the incurring of costs. FEMA will cover future costs from a recovery if they do issue a declaration. Now, we did meet earlier this week because I had some big questions about how is this impacting our operation, our operational budget, right? We're still operating within a budget. We still have to clean up after a storm, but we've got a budget that guides our efforts. And fortunately, because of the event and some other planned maintenance activities, or unfortunately, I guess however you want to look at it, the city is retooling or repositioning what we actually are going to accomplish this season from a maintenance standpoint. So our labor is already on the books, right? So we've prioritized the labor to recovery and debris removal, etc. The additional out-of-pocket costs in some respects are on overtime. However, we've basically decided to cancel some of our other maintenance activities, specifically chip sealing. Over the course of summer, we would spend weeks chip sealing streets that were on a list that need a new surface level treatment or maintenance need. And so along with that, we cancel all the contract payments. So we receive oil from a contractor, we receive the chips from a contractor, and there's all the equipment costs that go in with that. So at this point, it's just basically a musical chairs that we're moving the dollars around. So budgetarily, it isn't going to have a material impact, but there's obviously additional costs, and we weren't attributing our budget to storm cleanup, but we were attributing it to other areas. So we're optimistic the FEMA dollars will offset any out-of-pocket costs, as well as any restoration costs.
A big part of your job, you're sort of a city general manager in some ways, and you have to prioritize things. All these things are important to you.
Yes.
All these things you want to address. That's why you had these in plans. When things come up, having to adapt to those again, that word adapting, coming back to these kind of things where you have to kind of change it up, work around stuff. How much, as far as that affecting the city and moving things around and the cost, looking ahead, because I know you have to do that as well, we know that we're going to have, at some point, hopefully we'll have a decent winter and Mother Nature will take it easy on us a little bit, but we do know that there will be some hard days, some hard, heavy snow days, some heavy ice days. Do you think that will trickle into that it'll affect those days ahead?
Well, we do carry reserves, and the whole point in doing that is it's a rainy day fund, right? We've got a good, healthy reserve balance at the city. We were actually well above our minimum threshold, so we do that for these types of reasons, right? We just can't foresee the future. To the caller's other question around FEMA resources for private homeowners or private property or commercial property owners. FEMA does not, this event did not qualify for any non-public resources. So there will not be any resources for private individuals to pursue FEMA assistance. Like it's been discussed previously, this is really a public works event. It hasn't been much more than that. Those of us that experience private property damage, that's one thing, but we have homeowners insurance. And for folks that didn't were underinsured maybe, or can't afford a deductible, the state, I understand, does have some resources, but they have to qualify for a certain threshold. So I don't expect that the state's going to come in with a drove of resources in that regard. Kind of once I heard that you were had reached out to FEMA and everything, I kind of did a little homework myself, and the website FEMA.gov has a ton of information for you out there if you're curious, if you're interested about finding things. They also answer any questions you have, just as citizens. You can ask these questions. That's part of why they're there. So anything that you have out there that you're thinking of, if you don't get a chance to talk to the mayor or somebody else in the city officials, you can research a little bit yourself and look it up, which it's one of the fun things about this, is one of the nice things that we have available to us nowadays with online, the internet and everything. Let's go ahead and take another call. Good morning. You're on Morning Magazine with Mayor Zach Vruwink.
Good morning. My name's Ron. Hey, I heard you say that the homeowners didn't qualify for FEMA funding, I guess. But, kind of in a way they did, because if the government, if the city government got it, if the local unit of government got it, I guess the individual property owners got it too. So,
Yeah, and that's, FEMA.
Somewhere down the line, somebody's going to have to pay the bill, and,
And that's where, the private homeowners insurance qualifies, if you have an issue with it, Ron, I'd suggest you contact Congressman Kine's office because that's really where the complaints and concerns should go. This is what FEMA told us. Basically, it's a per capita threshold that has to be met, and there was not, at least at FEMA's visit, at their time of visit, there wasn't a threshold met by the quantity of private property damage to homeowners.
And Mayor, I know you have some other things that you wanted to get to today too, so please feel free if you wanted to touch on something else we can get to.
Yeah, we could talk about construction project updates. You know, certainly there's been an impact. I talked a little bit about how our public works activities are impacted by our storm recovery efforts, right? We're not doing as much, if any, chip sealing activities this year. Fortunately, the timing of the storm hit when we were having a short break in our construction schedule. So we ended up being able to apply all of our crews, all hands on deck, to storm removal and recovery, debris removal and recovery. But now we've started 17th Avenue and Chase, so folks that are over on this side of the town have now been probably disrupted by the closure of 17th and Chase, that intersection. And crews are going to be taking that in a block by block segment, so that way should we run into unforeseen circumstances, as we do in occasion on the west side of the river with bedrock and some other issues, that we're not going to have a street opened up through the course of winter. It's just not ideal. So they're going to be working through that, and that's going to take us through much of the remaining construction season. And crews are anticipated to hop over to Centralia Center parking lot as they get through Chase Street's reconstruction. The intersections at East Grand have also opened up, both at Lincoln and Jackson Street to cross traffic, as well as 3rd and 4th Street. So I know a lot of folks are pleased that have been disrupted over the course of the summer of their traffic pattern and such. So that's also moving along very nicely. It's ahead of schedule and under budget as it relates to East Grand Avenue.
That's great news. That's really good to hear, especially after everything we just talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's take another phone call here. Good morning. You're on Morning Magazine with Mayor Zach Vruwink.
Well, this is Ron again. I think we got cut off there, but you know, I didn't call to complain that FEMA didn't reimburse property owners individually. I called to make the realization that because the local unit of government is getting some money, that's benefiting the local property owners too, because the local property owners had to pay for that cost had it not been for FEMA.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. And actually, it's a good point as you raise about the utility. The utility brought in all these crews that were not their labor forces, right? We're fortunate that we used our labor forces that were already on the books, and the utility didn't, right? It was just such a widespread power impact that the $2.1 million that the utility incurred would have gone on us ratepayers should FEMA decide or not decide to reimburse us. So that's a great point. It's going to come out of our pocket, whether it's our collective federal resources or just our local resources, and hence why it makes the most sense to receive the federal assistance in this situation.
Appreciate the call, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it is one of those things too where we kind of have to take a step back, I think, sometimes, and take a look at this as especially if you're one of those people that is hurting out there. It's pretty hard to do that. I understand that, but it is one of those times where we take a step back and we look at things and we say, well, okay, but we have to prioritize and decide on these things.
Right.
What is a huge concern to one person may not be as big of a concern to another, and you have to make everybody happy. And so that is not only is that not easy to do, but that is one of those things that takes some maneuvering, takes some tinkering and everything.
Sure.
And again, the baptism by fire here, you're kind of dealing with a lot of this stuff that you've never dealt with before. So not only for you, but us as citizens, it's a lot. It is certainly, but we're seeing every day, we're seeing the area getting a lot cleaner, getting a lot better, getting more and more back to itself. And a year from now, it's going to be a lot different. Just keeping that big perspective kind of.
Right. And I think as it relates to a year from now and kind of other recovery, a lot of folks have reached out about desiring to plant and replant trees like Robinson Park and some of the other parks that were impacted. So we're in the process of establishing a tree fund. So if folks want to contribute to tree replacements in the public right-of-way or in parks, we are taking donations at City Hall for that. There was somebody that had contacted me from out of town that used to be from the community as well, with a desire to establish a tree replacement fund. So it's encouraging to see folks come together, even well after the storm, to say, what we want our community and our parks and public spaces to look just as good, if not better, than what they did before.
Oh, really appreciate hearing that. That's wonderful to hear. That's one of those things that was certainly in the back of my mind that was a concern, and something that I was hoping that eventually we'd be able to talk about and get to. So that's really cool to hear that the ball's always rolling. We're already rolling with it. And it is, hearing from a citizen who used to live here, doesn't live here anymore, that's something that since the storm happened I've heard more of. Doing the morning show and that kind of thing, we heard from people from, in Florida, different places that had moved and that kind of thing. But once the storm happened, heard a lot more from people just wondering how things are going, how they can help. I think that speaks to this area. And it speaks to the people of this area, that the bond that you grow, not only with your fellow community, but with the city itself,
right?
And the memories you build and everything. So that's something that no storm can take away. That no weather event can affect. It is nice to feel that. Again, kind of taking what silver linings we can from this and everything. It is important to know.
Yeah, home is never too far away, right?
Yeah. Speaking with Mayor Zach Vruwink, again, with an update not only on the storms and the FEMA situation, but plenty of other things. One thing I'd like to get to after the break is the open house that you guys had on Monday. So if we can talk about that, we'll talk about some other things too. Maybe we'll talk sports. Maybe we'll just give you a break.
Just give us
and we'll just talk about,
like,
is there any TV shows you like? Maybe we'll talk about that. We'll just give you a little break for a bit. Coming up here on Morning Magazine on AM 1320 WFHR. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of Morning Magazine with your guest host, James J. Maloff. I am joined today by Mayor Zach Vruwink and Kevin from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. And we are still taking calls, so 424-2600 if you have any questions for the mayor. Sir, I know that last night's city council meeting took place. How did that go?
Well, we had a number of items that I'd like to highlight for folks that are listening this morning. The first was the Planning Commission meeting had a number of items here in August. There was an annexation related to airport property, related to the Airport Commission's desire to construct a large commission hangar there for transient aircraft. The item had been discussed at a number of meetings, and so that item both went through the annexation process as well as the Plan Commission review, which reviews everything from architectural to landscaping to the site plan that potential development projects go through in the city. Also, the Rapids Floral store on 8th Street, 8th and Pepper, is doing a small expansion, and they bought the property just to the north of them between the Gallus Marine property, and they're going to be building on that very soon. Mariani Packing is also doing a small addition to their existing facility over on Washington Street. They continue to grow. It's pretty exciting to watch what they've done in the last couple of years. Not only did the floral business take an empty space and revitalize that, but Mariani's taken a greenfield site and continue to expand on it, and they're looking at future phases as well. So I think just in the last number of years they've added 125 jobs or more to their facility. So it's really incredible the growth that they've had. And then just down the corner, or down the street around the corner here from us on 25th Avenue is the Wheeler project, the Wheeler family of companies, which brought Chevrolet back to Wisconsin Rapids a number of years ago. Had bought the former Hanks Auto and redeveloped that corner into a really nice development. And they're going to be doing their Phase 2 project, which involves their body shop and then bringing GM and their other products to the property. So that project went through the Planning Commission. It'll be nicely landscaped, and it'll be a nice addition to the West Grand Avenue corridor as it's developed around there. So those were a couple of items that the Planning Commission took up, and I think another item that's been on the docket for the Planning Commission has been the rewrite of the city's sign code. We held an open house on Monday night. That was a nice opportunity for folks that had questions about the current or the future or the proposed sign ordinance, and to interface or to discuss that with the consultants that have been helping us rewrite the sign code, as well as a number of us Planning Commission members. So we added the open house concept to our outreach over the years, because we found it's a lot more relaxed environment than just sitting in a public hearing where you're being asked to speak for or against, and it's kind of a kind of an awkward process for folks that are just interested in asking questions. So the big changes with the proposed sign code really are that we're taking a look at all the zoning districts. So when the city rewrote its zoning code last year, the sign code needed to be updated for a couple of reasons. One, there's been some Supreme Court rulings around signs and free speech. So we can no longer regulate what's on signs. That really, from a freedom of speech standpoint, there's some really narrow limitations that cities and municipalities can place on signs. But basically, the sign code will update the sizes of signs, the quantity of signs, and then the look of signs. That in certain zoning districts, only certain sign types will be allowed. You can see this in a lot of communities that have had new development, where many of the communities have adopted a more conservative sign regulation, much more aesthetically pleasing signs that are not these obnoxious 30, 40 foot tall billboards at the front of a strip mall or something. They're just much more tactful and speak to a nice character component of the community.
I think that people can, take in a sign or a sign's meaning or message or whatever a lot better lower too. I mean, the big, pop and circumstance and all that doesn't really do a lot for a lot of people and everything. So and I'm just saying, marketing wise, even statistically, it's proven that it's a lot smarter. So that works out too.
Yeah, bigger isn't always better. And I think on 8th Street, so much of the feedback we get about 8th Street, in addition to just the road surface and the concerns people have with that, is the look of that corridor. It was built around 70s standards. A lot of that construction and the signs that were there were built around a thought that bigger and flashier was better. And it doesn't actually have a material impact, as you said, studies show, on somebody's willingness to patronize that business or visit them.
We're going to go ahead and take another call. Good morning on Morning Magazine with Mayor Zach Vruwink.
Yes, Mayor, I wonder if you could address the dog park issue. If we're going to have a dog park, if we're not.
Yeah, great question. So
thank you for the call.
For listeners that are interested in hearing this topic, I'll provide some background. First, the city, back in 2009, so 10 years ago, had negotiated with the then owners of the landfill. The landfill has been sold twice since, and I understand is going through another acquisition right now, to use a portion of their property as a dog park. And the city at that time, as I understood, after hearing from residents that they wanted to pursue a dog park, and I don't know exactly why that location was selected, and I don't have all that history. I wasn't a part of the program at that time. But the city agreed to, or the landfill came to an agreement with the city to use that property. There were some limitations about what could be done there. They didn't want permanent structures because they didn't think it'd be a permanent offering. The property was mired with challenges. It's lowland, it's wet, it's often mosquito and other bug infested area.
It really wasn't built for a dog park.
Correct. And really, I'm not sure if there's any development that can happen there because of the state of the groundwater and such. But the landfill did maintain that to some degree. There weren't any specifics in there about how often they maintained it or mowed it and all that. And so it was plagued with some challenges over the course of its 10-year run. The landfill, despite our attempt to seek a temporary extension, decided to provide notice that we are no longer able to use that property for the purposes of a dog park after the 31st of August here. And over the course of the summer, we had been discussing with residents and some non-city residents who thought the city should take an active role to offer the community a dog park. And one of the components was this extension with advanced disposal. And the second part was to do a survey to start getting people's preferences and ideas and what they wanted to see in a dog park. What amenities they would offer, the dog park would offer, and then to the extent that residents or non-residents or supporters really would be interested in helping maintain and overseeing and that sort of thing with the dog park. So that survey is out there. It'll be out there till the 1st of September. I encourage residents to go in and fill it out, or community members, not just city residents, but community members to fill it out. And at this point, one proposed site, so the city staff looked at various city properties or property around the city that would perhaps serve as either a temporary or long-term dog park. So there are, I think, 6 or 7 locations identified it narrowed it down based upon issues with parking or neighborhood, if you're too close to homes, all that sort of thing. And one property rose to the top as of one that seemed to offer some fencing ability, and that was right outside the airport fence to the north of the primary runway between the wastewater treatment facility and the airport fence. The hitch is that property is not in the city, and it also, as we just talked about zoning, is not zoned for anything but an airport. So despite the small walking path that occurred there years ago, and that it was never zoned, it does not have the proper zoning for a dog park to be built there. And so at this point, the Airport Commission does need to approve that as an interim site, and the town, actually, the Planning Commission has to agree that the potential use is appropriate for that property.
The caller was cheating off on my sheet here because that was like one of my last questions I was going to bring up. But I did have a lot of questions about it, and you've answered quite a few of them already. But one of the things that has come up, and especially when talking to listeners about this, because not everybody owns a dog, not everybody cares that much about this, being blunt about it.
Right.
But one thing that everybody that I talked to cared about was the growth of this city. And one thing that you will see, and you go ahead and do your homework out there on this, listeners, you look at any city, especially you look at the Midwest here, the cities that have been dog friendly, their growth in economy and population has grown with that. People love dogs. I mean, even people that don't own dogs, care about them and stuff. So something like this, like a dog park, has its importance.
It does.
Has a place. The caller earlier, Ron, was talking about how we, eventually, in one way or another, the cities, homeowners are taken care of. This is a similar thing, where one way or another, this affects our city's growth, population-wise, economy-wise. Being dog-friendly is something that is as common now. It's almost this version of the no smoking ordinance that took place quite a while ago, where it seemed like every city was, clamping down on smoking. That's the known thing with that now, is being animal friendly, being dog friendly is important. We only have so many seasons or so many months where we can even access these things. So, the upkeep of it isn't asked for year round necessarily. In some ways it is, I know, but not completely. And if we can find a good location, all the better. It's another selling point for our area. So it does have its importance, and certainly, again, coming back to prioritizing things, there are certain things that are above that, but it has its place in there.
Right, and I think the feedback that I've heard from residents is really, as I do on every issue, across the spectrum, right? Those that don't think the city should, it's got other needs and other priorities and probably should not invest perhaps in a dog park. Then I've heard the other end of the spectrum, right, that we really should offer this. And I think for me, I agree, I see the value of it. I think that our community should have a dog park. The question I think that I personally and others have continued to affirm with me is, who should ultimately pay for the maintenance and upkeep, right? If it's for the community should be paying for it, right? And that's perhaps the neighboring jurisdictions. People that consider themselves or have a Wisconsin Rapids mailing address don't pay city taxes, right? And so there's a question about equity and fairness. And I think in this case, a new location offers a great opportunity for those that maybe are not city residents to go to their town board or city or village board and say, we support this in our region. It doesn't make sense for us to do it ourselves, but we'd like to support one in the community. And so I'm optimistic that be the case. I've also heard from a number of folks that they would like to do this privately, where they take on a piece of property, maybe the city or another jurisdiction would provide that property to them, and then they would manage it. They would maybe provide a membership option, to make sure that it's as quality as everyone wants it to be. The city has a great track record of providing facilities and the infrastructure for things to occur, whether it's youth baseball or other park amenities. But there's a responsibility that goes above that, right? We're going to provide the property and maintain the property, but anything that goes above and beyond that, the city just has a lot of priorities. So I think, that would be my response. I think we should have one, and I think in order to have one, though, we need commitments. We need commitments from people to support it and to maintain it, possibly to donate to it, and we've received a lot of offers to that extent, and so it's very encouraging.
It is, and the majority of people are willing to do that, but it is a little, it is a quick reminder of how important certain things are to people when you can see the action behind the words.
Exactly. Exactly.
and willingness to participate or volunteer or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
And the survey will be available until September 1st for the feedback on the dog park. If you have any questions or if you want to fill out the survey, you can go to Parks Department at WIRapids.org. That's Parks Department at WIRapids.org. Or you can call the Parks and Rec Department at 715-421-8240. You can give us a call if you have a question for the mayor at 424-2600. I know that you guys have a number of projects on the agenda right now. If you want to address any of that.
So we talked about the street reconstruction projects and gave a good update on that. The aquatic center development is moving along at a healthy pace. If folks are interested, I encourage them to check the city's Facebook pages or the project Facebook page, Wisconsin Rapids Aquatic Center, and to see the great footage that our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media put together. I did an interview out there standing in one of the pools, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
Nice. It's neat to be in those places as they're being developed, right? And so we encourage folks to follow the progress out there. But there's some nice drone footage that really shows how that facility is taking shape. They've had a good construction year so far, weather-wise, and fortunately have only had 2 days where they had to kind of delay and postpone activities. But that's gone really well, and we're understood that they're going to have the rebar and everything in for the other 2 pools within the coming weeks. And the other pools will be poured shortly thereafter. So by this time in September, nearly all the pool vessels will be poured and have taken shape, and then they plan to pour the entire deck around the pools yet this fall. And then the people will start seeing the buildings go up here into the fall and into the winter. They'll work through the winter on the building construction, and then in the spring they'll do the finishing touches. So the good news is that facility is scheduled to open by the time the swimming season comes around next spring. And then as far as other construction projects related to that, there's the tennis courts will be revisited. We're also meeting with some folks to talk about pickleball. Pickleball is becoming increasingly popular in the city, and our facilities, tennis court facilities, are showing some age, and they need some TLC. And so we're talking about what is the future of pickleball and tennis in the community. Is it, especially in light of the school district's plans to add additional ball fields and tennis courts over at the high school, how do the city and school district facilities play in together? And then you add in the YMCA development, which has some pickleball courts inside their facility. Obviously they're indoor, but all these are facilities that are available to the community. So we're trying to quantify and understand the demands for use and for play, and so there's going to be more on pickleball in the future. All these variety topics that seem to cross the mayor's desk, right?
I'm just thinking about just that, actually. I was just thinking about, did you when you were gearing up to get into politics and everything, did they teach you juggling? Because you really do have a lot of different things to juggle here.
And it's all of its figurative forms for sure. Some other topics or priorities that I've been involved in. Boys and Girls Club YMCA project continues on pace, and I'm not sure if they provided an update recently.
Yeah, we talked to them a little bit about
it. Good. Last week, the VA clinic pulled their permits to begin the build-out of the new VA clinic, which will be on the backside of the former mall adjacent to the entrance of the senior center. And that's about a $4 million project, and that'll be wrapped up come late spring next year. And from as soon as that's done, they'll tear down the old VA clinic. And then around that same time, as I understood this week, the Boys and Girls Club and YMCA facilities will open to the public. So pretty good progress on that facility. And then the big project that we've talked about previously is Metalco and their aluminum plant investment. They just pulled their permits for excavation and their foundation and footing work, so that people will be able to see earth being moved out at the site. To encourage people to go check it out. Don't enter the construction site, but stay visible from the road off of 48th Street. And so that project's moving forward. Probably about 2 months behind schedule, but hopefully we'll have a good solid fall, Mother Nature willing, and they'll be able to make up some time in their construction schedule.
2020 is looking like a really big spring summer around here.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of things that we've been talking about really taking shape, complete shape. When it comes to that time of year.
Yeah.
So a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, it's Wisconsin Rapids Centennial as Wisconsin Rapids in 2020. So it'll be a big year to celebrate the progress over the last 100 years, and probably 151 years of our founding as a community. So a lot to celebrate and a lot to look forward to, I think, as we go forward, economically, socially, environmentally, with a lot of our improvements to treat and to take care of the environment and our various initiatives throughout the city. So yeah, definitely a lot on the horizon.
Speaking of the environment, there is a connection here, but how is the garage pickup going? How is that all taking place? It seems like by now, from what I've heard from a lot of residents, things have kind of all kind of working on, everything's going well, smoothly.
Yeah, the automated garbage collection has gone, instituted as we expected it. We knew that just like recycling, there were folks that maybe forgot to face their bin to the curb in the right way. The spacing between the bins has also been an issue, and the fact that you cannot set trash outside the bin. Our driver's not going to get out of the truck and load their bin again, and to make sure the bins are closed. As the automated arm picks up the bin, there's a chance that the garbage could fall out if the bins are not closed. And so that project, or that service, has gone over well. I think a lot of folks are real happy with it. I can say that there's a likelihood our tipping fees will go down, or the fees that the landfills charge us for how much we're putting in the landfill. And there are a couple of outstanding issues, as I see it, that we're going to have to talk about in the future. One is bulk item pickup. The furniture, the mattresses, the construction materials. It's across the board. Some cities don't even touch it. Some cities off a drop site. We're very fortunate in Wisconsin Rapids to have a landfill here. Many communities do not have a landfill. We're the landfill for Stevens Point, for Wausau, Marshfield. All the communities in between send their trash to the Wisconsin Rapids landfill. So having that in the city is a differentiator, and I think it's a lot more accessible for folks. However, if you don't have the means to haul something, it can become a challenge. So we encourage folks to call 211. There's a couple of volunteer resources out there that folks have gotten something they need to have hauled to the landfill they can. But we also encourage, if someone's buying a new mattress, take advantage of either the free or the very reduced cost pickup and haul away of the old one. Same thing with appliances. Focus on Energy offers some great incentives and even a rebate if folks are getting rid of some of their appliances. TVs, I know Best Buy and some other local drop points, ODC included, takes electronics waste. Of course, for a fee. These things don't cost. Are not free to treat. Or to disassemble and all of that. So encourage folks to use those outlets and those services. But the automated garbage pickup is going over well, and we're still working out route kinks, and for a couple of weeks there were some pain points about across this one side of the street maybe not getting picked up because the driver thought they had done it, that type of thing. But otherwise it's going over well.
It's one of those it's a process.
It is,
but it is all for the good, and not only from a number of points that you made right there, but certainly again coming back to the environment. This is the earth is really going to appreciate this a lot. What we're doing, and that's an investment in not only our future but our children's future and their kids' future, and you guys know how the song goes. I mean, this is something that it's one of those issues where you would like to think that we can all get along on. We all want this earth around a long time.
That's right.
So I appreciate the update on that. Thank you. We're going to take a really quick break. When we come back, we'll have more with Mayor Zach Vruwink on Morning Magazine, AM 1320, WFHR. We have Morning Magazine in our final segment with Mayor Zach Vruwink. And again, Mayor, thanks for the time. We have a call-in today we're going to go ahead and take right now. Good morning. You're on with the Mayor.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Mayor and James. It's a great program today. But I have a question for you, for those of us who are a little on the older side and maybe a tad out of touch. Could you quickly just explain what pickleball is?
Oh, sure.
And I'm going to hang up and I'll listen on the radio.
Great question.
Thanks for the call. I have not played it, but it's a variation of tennis in that the ball is like a wiffle ball, and you actually can fit 2 courts on a single tennis court. So you think of the nets in the middle, and they actually bring a smaller net and locate it. Surprisingly, it's most popular with older residents, retirees that are snowbirds. I've heard that folks that maybe leave the community in the winter, they have huge pickleball tournaments and pickleball activity in where they may live in the wintertime. So, I wouldn't say you're out of touch. I'm probably out of touch in that I haven't played it. I mean, I think I played it in gym class or something, but I haven't played it in years to really know the rules or anything. But it's meant to be a real active sport without all of the kind of pounding or the quick nature that tennis involves. So it's I'd encourage you to watch our city recreation brochure or contact the rec department and pop over to watch a game. I've seen we've got a couple of leagues in town that bring people from out of town, Stevens Point and other communities, to actually play in this tournament and this leagues. And I've seen them play. I know we offer play at Mead Field, so the tennis courts there, and then obviously the ones that are out of commission at Witter. But those would be check out the ones at Mead. See, I can't remember what night of the week they play, but I'm sure they'd welcome you. Maybe even give you a demo on how to play yourself.
It's I've heard it described as the bowling of tennis.
Okay.
It's fun, and it's you're getting some cardio and everything, but it's not thing that's too strenuous that takes too much out of you, and it is a lot of fun. I've seen a lot of my friends talking about it and everything, and I've been very curious. I'm always interested to try something different, especially a different sport or whatever.
Yeah.
It's great to hear that call there, that her being curious about that, and I'm glad that you said that about the. Because it's certainly open to everybody, and anybody can play it. But you're right. A majority of the people that I've seen enjoying it and that I've seen talking about it are a little older than us, and in that age group.
Yeah.
So you're not out of touch. You're just catching up. That's all.
And I think it's it's a great opportunity for folks that maybe don't move as quickly, but are looking for a good workout without having to put all the stress on their body that some of the other physical activity could be about.
I'm in my early 40s, and I love to go just shoot some hoops every once in a while. It's good, my cardio. It's a little bit of my before my workout. It's a nice way to warm up.
Sure.
I was out there the other day realizing there is going to be a day I am not able to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I've been doing it since I was 13.
Right.
Doing this. So it is important as we get older to address those things to make sure that we have something that keeps us active, whatever that might be. If it can't be what we normally used to do, something like pickleball may be it. And there's certainly plenty of other ways too.
Yeah, I think our recreation department does a great job of offering a very diverse generational offerings for programming. We're getting into some of the art stuff too, but just the pickleball piece is kind of an exciting thing for folks that are not in the t-ball category anymore, right? If they're really
right.
So it's really neat to see.
Dodgeball is probably not a good idea for certain age groups
either.
Not, so that's certain things. Well, talking about these things kind of leads into my final question for you. We got about a minute or two left, and certainly we're open to your calls still, everybody. If you want to call in 424-2600. We were joking about this off air a bit, that you've been able to save a lot of money as far as because you don't have a lot of time to watch TV shows and all this. Yeah. But you've got to relax sometime. Yeah, you've got to kind of. We know that our minds don't work right without some relaxation. How do you kind of kick back? How do you do you like to read? Do you listen to music?
5 mile runs along the riverfront. I think that's probably my people can see me out relaxing. That's my evening wind down if I can. Or jumping on a bike. I've got a kayak, so I try to get outdoors and kayak occasionally. But those, just some sort of being outside is really what I love to do.
Right on. That's a great one, and I think that's great for listeners out there too that need to know that hey, we need to fit that into our schedule. That kind of time. We have time for one more call. We have a little bit less than 2 minutes left, so a little bit short on time. But good morning, you're on with the mayor.
Good morning. Real fast question: the major storm that we had here a while back, and then after that, several more storms where they were warning you on the radio or on television, and yet the sirens never blew for that storm and some other ones that came through after that. Just wondering, did they ever figure out what was wrong or why those sirens never blew? Sure. Thank you. I'll listen off the air.
Thanks for the call. Yeah, great call, and I probably should have mentioned it on our earlier topic. There's been a policy that was approved in 1998 at the city level that the city would not, or Wood County Dispatch would not sound the sirens within the city unless there was a tornado watch or tornado warning event. There's some other qualifying circumstances like hazardous material spills and such. But the city at that time decided to not sound the alarms in the case of a thunderstorm warning. That has since been the topic of discussion. My preference, and I think others, is to sound in the case of a thunderstorm warning. While it seems like we get them all the time, We get them, a couple times a month, and I think the sirens. The purpose of the sirens is it's an outdoor warning system. It's meant to alert people that are outdoors to get indoors, and they're not meant to be heard necessarily in your house. You've got other communication means to hear those warnings, as the caller just mentioned. But while that policy has not been changed, we have sounded the alarms in the case of thunderstorm warnings, and that is my hope that that'll continue in the future.
Appreciate the answer. And with everything today, I appreciate the transparency and just the openness about it. It's always good talking with you.
Thanks, James.
You have yourself a good day. Try to get some relaxing in there at some point. And thanks for all the hard work. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks to the listeners.
We've been talking with Mayor Zach Vruwink today. I want to thank him and thank Kevin from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media for joining us today on Morning Magazine. Be sure to join us tomorrow, where in Part 1, Family Natural Foods will be with us, and in Part 2, UW Extension Wood County's Janelle Weir, right here on Morning Magazine, AM 1320, WFHR.